Thank you for joining me today. My name is Jessica, and I will be hosting our author chat this evening. So I'm going to start off with the land acknowledgement. The land that we are standing on today is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Skulog Island First Nation and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that Oshawa is covered under the Williams Treaties, and as a settler on these lands, we are all treaty people. May we respectfully honor the knowledge and understanding of Indigenous stewards of these ancestral lands and ensure that the voices of First Peoples are represented in our collections, programs, and services.
My name is Jessica. I am the librarian that will be hosting tonight. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end. So let me introduce our speakers today. Our author is Ethan Liu, and Ethan writes widely, including a column for the Financial Post. Both Once a Bitcoin Miner and Ethan's debut book, Field Notes from a Pandemic, have received national accolades. Ethan is a former Reuters reporter and has served as a visiting journalist at the University of British Columbia. Ethan lives in Toronto. And our host for this evening is Dean Jobb. Dean is an author, journalist, and academic based in Nova Scotia. His latest book, The Case of the Murderous Dr. Cream, recreates the crimes of Canadian Dr. Thomas Neil Cream, a Victorian era serial killer, and was longlisted for the American Library Association's Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence. In his 2015 book, Empire of Deception, the story of brazen 1920s Chicago conman Leo Koretz won the Crime Writers of Canada Award for Best True Crime Book. Dean writes the monthly true crime column Stranger Than Fiction for Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine, and his features and book reviews have appeared in Crime Reads, the Irish Times, the Globe and Mail, and other major publications. He teaches in the Master of Fine Arts and Creative Nonfiction program at the University of King College in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Oh, that's very interesting. I've looked at that program before. So Dean, I will turn it over to you and let's get started.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jessica. And I've got to get a shorter intro. Ethan, great to meet you. And you can explain you're somewhere on the road doing a story. So maybe you want to just explain why I think you're probably on a phone or an iPad.
Yes, so in my book, Once a Bitcoin Miner, I depict an event in which I go to North Korea for a crypto conference, and when I was there, there was someone who went with me. His name is Virgil Griffith, and he's quite a big deal in the Ethereum Foundation, and he ended up being arrested by the FBI for going to that conference, and he pleaded guilty last year to helping North Korea break sanctions through blockchain. And he's supposed to be sentenced yesterday, which is why I'm in the US. But at the very last minute, the sentencing was actually moved to April, but he pleaded guilty to 6.5 years. And so that's the latest on that.
Okay, which is in your book. Yes, the Virgil figures quite prominently. Well, Ethan, let's start off. First of all, thanks to everyone who's joined us tonight. Good books, any really good book, takes us somewhere unfamiliar, takes us to a new place. And that works for fiction and nonfiction. And Ethan's book, Once a Bitcoin Miner, takes us to a place that we hear a lot about, but I think it's going to be a very unfamiliar landscape. So Ethan, thank you. And my first question is, let's start with your discovery of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Tell us a bit about when you first learned about them or exposed to them.
So that was in 2012, 2013. So I was in my second year of university, and one day my friends and I, for no reason in particular, decided to go onto the dark web. And this was back when Silk Road was still running. That was the dark web marketplace that was on which people can buy weapons and drugs. And this was a dark web is a portion of the internet that is unmapped by mainstream search engines. And you can theoretically on those marketplaces you can buy all sorts of weapons and drugs, etc. And the how people paid for their stuff, it was through Bitcoin. And that was when I first heard the name Bitcoin. But it would take me like almost a whole year before I actually said, hey, maybe like I would put some of my money into Bitcoin.
Now, you also in the book describe yourself as that guy at a party or a social event or that people meet. And because of your background, everyone asks you to explain Bitcoin. So I guess I'm going to ask you to be that guy tonight. And tell us, what do we need to help us understand what Bitcoin is, how it works?
So I'll go back to what I said just now about the dark web. So that was actually Bitcoin's first modern use case. People were using it to transact on the dark web. But why did people do that? Is because theoretically there's no central administrator in that. So when you might think these days we all spend money digitally. When you buy something over the internet, it's a click, but it's actually quite complicated. There are lots of third parties there processing the money, and Visa can stop your payment. The bank, they can seize your money with a court order, but with Bitcoin, it's directly peer-to-peer. So theoretically, your money can't be seized, can't be frozen, and the technology backing that is also being used for lots of other use cases, as we have seen in NFTs. So that's basically what it is.
Okay, so but what tangibly, I guess, maybe it's a generational thing here, Ethan. I'm slightly older than you. I know paper money only has the value printed on it. And I'm old enough to remember when coins were silver and probably had some inherent value. But what gives Bitcoin its value? And throughout the book, you talk about your journey with Bitcoin, and you also intersperse what Bitcoin was worth, ranging from a couple of thousand a Bitcoin to 20,000 or more. But what's really backing that? Help us understand what gives Bitcoin its value or its currency.
I think firstly, when you say something has to be backed by something, that's a bit of a misnomer, because cash was taken off the gold standard quite a while back. What gives Bitcoin its value is its scarcity. So there are only 21 million Bitcoins, and it's a very hard cap. And the network, it's done in such a way that nobody can alter it, nobody can forge a Bitcoin. So there is basically no way to create another Bitcoin out in the existence aside from the 21 million that exists. And it's a bit abstract, and you might ask, like, why would some intangible internet thing, even if there are 20 million of it, why would that have value? And I guess all value is abstract in a way. It's a bit like gold, because where does gold derive its value from? There is utility from it, but that's quite a small portion of its use. And the main reason gold is valuable is akin to oil in a way as well, because most of gold and oil, they're all traded in the paper market. The actual product doesn't change hands. So Bitcoin resembles that in a way.
Okay. And you talk about being a Bitcoin miner. Tell us, what exactly is a Bitcoin miner?
So basically, if I were to send you a Bitcoin, that has to be the process by which that happens. It happens because of the miners. So they run servers and they process that transaction. And through that, they earn new units of Bitcoin. And they do that by solving these complex computational puzzles. And so in a nutshell, that's basically what mining is. It's like the backbone of the network, and they keep that network going.
And I guess again, maybe it's a generational thing, but I'm always looking for the tangible of the. So these solved mathematical or computing problems, is that what gives Bitcoin its value? That the work you're doing, mining Bitcoin, in a sense, creating it, getting that's the value that ultimately flows from a Bitcoin. Is that a commodity you're selling?
It's a little bit. So if we want to get more deeply into this, it's called proof of work. So
Okay.
These computational puzzles these machines are solving, they process the transaction, they introduce new Bitcoins into the system, they basically keep that network going, and it requires a lot of computing power. And so this basically keeps the network from being tampered with. So if you want to tamper with the network, if you want to create a forgery, if you want to double send, you will need a lot of computing power. So it basically keeps it secure. And our monetary system, a dollar is a dollar. It's hard to forge it. That's secure, but that's being made secure by a centralized system, and lots of people being employed to make it secure. But basically what Bitcoin tries to do, it tries to do that, but in an automatic way.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess the next question I had was about that. Why does Bitcoin? I mean, I know we only hear the bad news about things, and Bitcoin can be that way too. But there is some fraud. You write about this. You write about questionable dealings. You write about one a Bitcoin advocate, a promoter who says it's not a Ponzi scheme till it's over. Why does it seem such an easy target or a target for fraud? Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin.
Uh-huh. So the person that you described, so he wasn't actually promoting Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has spawned lots of like thousands of different other cryptocurrencies.
Right.
And
yeah.
he, the first time I met him, which I write in the book, he was at an event he was organizing. There was an actual Ponzi scheme being promoted, and it had the name of crypto just writing on the name, and it seemed to me actually quite slimy. But and in his defense, he says that he wasn't the one organizing it. He had no idea it was that way. But yeah, I think there's quite a seductiveness to this. And the person in particular, he had a bit of a complicated past, lots of legal cases, and he had suspended charges in criminal cases. And I think he didn't get anywhere into his life until this new phenomenon of Bitcoin came. And he thought perhaps this is a ticket to a better life, to something else. And he jumped into it just entirely.
So really no different than any financial market. Bernie Madoff didn't work in Bitcoins, and he managed to get a bunch of billions. So is there anything, is it particularly more of a problem with cryptocurrency? Is it easier to, for instance, use fraud because of the way it's structured? Just curious your thoughts on that.
I would say yes and no. So backtracking a little bit. So when I first heard about that guy at the Ponzi scheme that I went into, there was this event. It was advertised as a Bitcoin meetup, and I was going there hoping to meet like other crypto people. But when I went there, there was a guy literally quoting Bible verses. He was saying, "Trust not in your own understanding. Lean to the Lord. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not to your own understanding." And it was a whole bizarre conference event, and they were basically it was the same spiel that you would expect at an MLM, at a pyramid scheme that happened like way before crypto. And a lot of these scams that you see in crypto, they're not particularly crypto scams, but they are scams that have been existing all throughout existence. And but I guess because something is new, and when you put that name on it, it has a certain resonance with certain people.
As mentioned in the intro, I wrote about a Ponzi schemer in the 1920s, and he had just a steady stream of people begging to buy shares in his company because he was promoting an oil company, and this was the dawn of the automobile age. So it does seem that is whenever there's something new, it invites that kind of the fringe or illegality. You do say that most people can't tell the difference between a legitimate crypto blockchain project and a scam. Can you tell us a bit about what are the warning signs? What are the differences?
Yeah, I guess the biggest warning sign if someone promises you returns. If someone says that if you invest with me, you'll get like 50% up, and that is something a legitimate project will never do. And also, these are referral fees, like and we go back to the guy we talked about just now, and he actually has been, even up until now, he has been in trouble with the securities regulator. He is still promoting a couple of these things where, so if it promises returns and if it offers you a referral fee, it's probably a sign that you should walk away.
Right. Or I guess in the 20s, or same now, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, maybe is always the best advice. You write about your encounter with and a bit of your knowledge of the case of Gerald Cotton of Quadriga CX fame, which has been in the news again with a memoir penned by his widow, Jennifer Robertson. And I'm just wondering, tell us a bit about that particular case of Cotton and Quadriga.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I first met Gerald Cotton in 2014. So this was, in terms of crypto time, this was really early days. And back then, Quadriga CX was a big deal because back in the day, if you wanted to buy crypto with Canadian dollars in Canada, that there weren't many places you can go to, and Quadriga was one of them. And everyone who had any connection with crypto in Canada, they had an account with Quadriga. And at the time, I had no idea any of this would happen. And he actually gave me quite a good impression. And I ended up using Quadriga because of that. And years later, 2018, 2019, I guess 2018 it died, 2019 it was made public. And I actually had 13 ethers on it. And back when that happened, it wasn't worth that much. Maybe it was $2,000, but right now I think that 13 ethers, that's probably like 80,000 that I lost with it when he was reported dead in India.
So, Ether is another cryptocurrency. If I don't know if I've got that right or not. I think I do. But maybe you just tell the people a little bit about what happened to Quadriga. It's quite an interesting story. I don't know if you covered it. You certainly talk about it in the book, but maybe you could just fill the audience in on how that story ends, if it has.
So Gerald Cotton, he was, so the story that his widow gave, at least, was that he and his widow, they were on a honeymoon, and they were going to build an orphanage in India. And while he was there, Jerry got sick and Jerry died. And somehow the way he ran the exchange platform, he alone had the password to everything. And so when he died, all that crypto was lost because we can go back to what we talked about earlier. What makes Bitcoin, what makes crypto valuable? It's that he who owns the password owns everything, and it's both a feature and a bug. So nobody can seize your Bitcoin if you hold that. Technically, it's called the private key, but if someone has that, they own your Bitcoin. And if you own an exchange and if you die without passing on the passphrase to anyone, then all those coins are lost forever. So that is the official story, but lots of people believe that Gerald Cotton didn't really die, that he faked his death, because after he died, it emerged that he had been involved in lots of scams and he was basically a bit of a shady guy.
Okay. Now, the question that I wanted to ask was, as I'm looking at it here, is that some passages in your book resemble the wild party scenes in the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. I've thought perhaps you could promote your book as Wolf of Wall Street meets Wolf of Wall Street. But you write about the lifestyle and excesses of the people you encountered in the cryptocurrency world. Could you tell us a little bit about that, a few of your experiences?
Yeah, I think for lots of people in the crypto world, they got a lot of money without expecting it, because there's a saying that the big question isn't whether Bitcoin will go like from $1,000 to $100,000. The big question is whether it'll go from 0 to 1,000, because back in those early days, it was a lot more uncertain. And the very early adopters, I think they were either people on the margins of mainstream society, or they were basically criminals selling drugs on the dark web. And so a lot of those people, they got very rich very quickly. And I think the crypto space, it is becoming more mainstream. The big banks are entering, but a big portion of it is dominated by those old school people. And I think those crazy parties you described, like as I write in the book, that's a reflection of that.
You want to tell us a couple of stories of your experiences?
Yeah. So I was on a Thai island once, and there was someone who became quite rich through Bitcoin, and I think his past is a bit mysterious to me. And there were people saying that he was a dark web drug dealer, and he had this plan. And I think, like, if you watch the Godfather, every gangster wants to turn legitimate, and he had that plan as well. And he ran this incubator on a Thai island, and basically like an incubator in the conventional sense, where you would give money and early guidance to startups in exchange for a stake. But I don't think this guy had any knowledge of how to run this, or maybe even desire. And it was a pretty wild place, and like people came and went, and nothing for a long time, nothing really came out of it. And there was a swimming pool shaped like a penis, and I was there for a whole week. I didn't notice this until toward the end, where I saw like the shape of this thing is pretty weird. And I heard like during the incubators, while the days, there was an orgy in the pool. People brought over a shaman, and after I left, there were even crazier stories involving that place with local mafia. And yeah, I think while lots of crypto, it's becoming more integrated in mainstream society, those early days, it was pretty wild.
Now, the other thing that I had this question, or meant to ask it earlier, but there seems to be, and you write about this, there's almost an obsessive quality, I guess, because it's on, we all check our email, or we check our social media feeds, but Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, has a bit of that. You write about checking your values everywhere, that it almost becomes an obsession. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so I think one thing in which one way in which Bitcoin and crypto differs from the traditional markets is that if you work in traditional finance, whatever you do, if you trade oil, if you do equities, you get to switch off at 5. The market opens every day at 9:30, and not even 5, like 4 o'clock something, it closes, and you get to have a break. And on public holidays, it's not open, but crypto, it trades 24/7, and I think for lots of crypto traders, I've talked to quite a lot, and for a while, I decided to trade trading is a little different from investing. You more actively buy and sell, and it's very tiring because you're basically on alert 24/7.
Okay. Now, if anyone in our audience is thinking of, as you mentioned, cryptocurrency, big banks are getting involved. It's becoming very much mainstream. What advice would you have for anyone who's thinking of perhaps doing some investing in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies?
I would say that crypto is probably one level of crazy above traditional investing, but crypto is a big world. Within crypto, there are established cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ether, and there are also those coins based on dogs, and there are also NFTs, and those are like one level above Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I would always say it's okay to jump one level, and in fact, I encourage people to jump one level. So if you are doing traditional investing, it's okay to invest in Bitcoin. And if you are already investing in Bitcoin, it's okay to maybe look at NFTs. But if you're not doing any investing at all, don't jump into crypto. Maybe look into traditional investing first. And if you're doing traditional investing, don't buy a coin that has a face of a dog on it.
What are NFDs? I'm sorry, did you say, or NFPs?
NFT. So you know
NFT?
those like digital pictures that sell for like lots of money?
Oh, right. Yes, you mentioned these in the book. Maybe you could just, sorry. So this is a sort of it's digital artwork, I guess. Right.
Yeah. So like NFTs, it's basically like like digital art. You can make lots of copies of it, but NFTs, it basically provides a way to say like which copy is the original.
Okay, so it becomes it's like an old masters, but for today. There's only one of it, and that makes it valuable, or may make it valuable. I got you. Now, your title of your book is Once a Bitcoin Miner. So suggests you're not anymore, or are you still involved in cryptocurrency in some way?
Well, I guess it depends on how you define involved. I do not have that crypto mining facility anymore, but I still have personal investments in the area, and I still write a column in the Financial Post and in the Globe and Mail. So I guess I'm involved in that sense.
But you're not actually mining Bitcoins as you described in the book.
No, but that was so. I actually, to be perfectly honest, I started that mining facility as a bit of a vehicle for the book, because, as you know, if you want to write a book, you have to write a proposal, and you have to say why you are the person to write it. And I actually had the idea to write this book way back in like 2014, and I could not answer that question. So I thought maybe like with the mining facility, I can answer that question.
So really immersion reporting, another way of immersing yourself in that world.
Yeah, that's what I tried to do.
Now, Ethan, what's next? As an author, I never like getting asked this question unless I actually do have a new project. But just, do you have a new project you can tell us about?
So I have like a vague spectral idea of a third book, but I probably shouldn't talk publicly about this yet. But I do have something else coming out that's crypto related. So it's a magazine piece in Toronto Life, and it's about the kid in Hamilton who's accused of stealing 46 million in cryptocurrency,
Right.
which I think many people have heard about that. So it's a story about who is this kid and how this kid came to be, and it will contain quite a lot of information that's not yet publicly available.
All right. Well, sounds fascinating. Well, we'll watch for that. And I believe he was a teenager. He's just a teenager, isn't he? This guy in Hamilton. Yeah.
Well, he's not a teen now, but he's actually very lucky that he was the alleged crime occurred before he turned 18, and so it's actually very hard to find information about this because he was a minor.
Oh, right. So his name isn't made public. Well, good for you. Now, I think we have some questions in chat, but is there anything just before we turn to that? I turn it back to Jessica. Did you have anything else that I sort of missed? You wanted to mention about the book, Ethan, or anything you wanted to add?
No, maybe just one thing. So I'm always very cognizant of big tech dominance. So if anyone here wants to buy the book, please avoid Amazon.
Okay, good news. But that's probably backwards. But if I was standing in a mirror, that's what Ethan's book looks like.
Well, I can ask a question.
Thank you,
I'm curious. So you wrote one book, and clearly you got a taste for it, and you had a writing career kind of already. I'm curious. Now you say you have a third book. How has the influence on your? I guess I'm thinking of this in two ways: how the financial brain works one way, and the creative writing brain works another way. So I'm wondering how your writing has grown over the time, or what about it, I guess, did you love so much that made you want to keep writing books?
So I've actually never thought of myself as having a financial brain. I've always been of the writing sort, and this is something I try to do through the book. And I feel that lots of crypto books, they either look at it through the perspective of monetary policy or computer science, but I feel there's a human condition aspect to crypto that's perhaps not that explored, and that's what I tried to do this book. And I always, whatever I write, I try to look at it as a story. You know, there's a character, there are people who want things and they meet challenges and they have to resolve that. And I think a story is always a better way into any subject.
I couldn't agree more.
And maybe I could jump in with something that I thought of as you're talking. Is one thing, Ethan, maybe you could talk about just the amount of research and the challenges, the difficulties you had, people who wouldn't talk, people who wouldn't respond to you. Could you talk about the sort of the craft or the research process that you had to go through for this book? Some examples of difficulties or challenges you had to overcome?
Yeah, and I'm sure that this is something that will probably resonate with you as well. When you write creative nonfiction, I think you, at least I try to write it as much like a novel as I can, but every detail has to be true. So you have to. And there are lots of places in the book where I try to describe the weather, and I really have to go look into historical data and see what's there. And sometimes I describe built paintings in buildings, and for one of them I actually called up the artist to talk to the artist. But what was perhaps most challenging was that this was also a work of investigative journalism. So the central character, at least two of them, Jan Starato and there's Steve Carter, and I guess I perhaps was not depicting them that favorably, and they know that if they were to be depicted, it probably would not be that favorably. And Steve Carter did give me, like, he was actually receptive. I did have an interview with him, but Jen Serrato, and he was the guy we talked about earlier, who was listed as the organizer of that Ponzi scheme into which I walked. And he would not talk to me, and I ran his name through the courts, and there's so much information you can find out about someone if you run that name through the courts. And eventually I tracked him down at a casino, and it was quite an awkward encounter. And I have to say, I'm not someone who likes confrontation, and there are lots of reporters who like confrontation. I have lots of friends who are like that, but I'm not someone like that, and I found it very awkward. But at the end of the day, it was something that had to be done. You know, it's both an ethical and legal obligation. And that night, I actually slept really soundly. I thought that, you know, I had done my duty. I had presented everything I wanted to write about him. I presented that to him, and so that's like a gist of the research for the book.
It's interesting. I write historical nonfiction, mostly true crime, and I know some people say, "Well, how can you find this material?" And you know, there's a wealth of material, and but it's easy. You know, there's obviously gaps, and it's sometimes easy to think, well, if I was doing the story on today, I could talk to everyone. But of course, as you pointed out, that depends, or that hinges on whether people want to talk to you and will talk to you. So you still have challenges in every sense, which you deal with well, and deal with in the narrative. Reading this, you know, you were very open about what you knew, but also what you couldn't find out and why, and which for the reader is very illuminating and very encouraging. You know, you're showing both sides of it, what's known, but also what, despite your efforts, isn't knowable.
Thank you so much, Ethan, and thank you, Dean. Hopefully everyone feels like they learned something tonight. As you can see, my colleague has shared a survey in the chat with us. So if you just want to click on that link, let us know what you thought of tonight's program. And thank you so much, everyone who came. And yeah, I guess that's
Okay.
it.
Well, thank you.
All right.
And thank you, Ethan. Good luck with the book and congrats on it. And I think everyone will look forward to that Toronto Life piece.
It's a great pleasure to appear here today.